consider a barrier to voting lack of transportation. Rich Dennison, Fox News.
Federal aviation safety investigators arriving Monday at the scene of a deadly helicopter crash outside San Antonio. A newlywed couple flying away from their wedding reception Saturday night killed when the chopper slammed into a hill.
At this point, it's just a matter of documenting the wreckage site, how it lays out, and again, it's scattered 100 yards or so across the side of the hill.
Craig Hatch of the National Transportation Safety Board says they'll also look into the weather, the maintenance history of the aircraft, and the qualifications of the pilot, who also died in that crash. 2 death row inmates have died in California, but neither of them were executed, both apparently taking their own lives. Each man had killed multiple victims, each found unresponsive in his death row jail cell in separate California prisons. The presidents of Guatemala and Honduras have called for an investigation to identify the organizers of the caravan of migrants weaving its way through Mexico as thousands of migrants enter the Mexican capital. Under intense pressure from the U.S. to clamp down on the exodus, the presidents are trying to determine who organized the caravan. Thousands of Central Americans dreaming of getting to the United States streamed into Mexico's capital city of Mexico City during the day on Monday and bedded down in a sports stadium on the eve of the midterm elections. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Is Guam prepared for whatever option we might choose? Come and listen to him.
You know what? My goal is to turn around our government, and I want people to trust our government. And I just have to say that at the end of the day, when people go out to vote, they need to ask themselves, who is the person that they can trust?
Expand the economy, provide for our people, job creations. We can do for ourselves, and we can do them proudly.
Once you start doing your plan and people start seeing, hey, she really means business. We mean what we say, and we're going to do what we say.
Love you.
I want to make sure we send that message out.
The change is coming. It won't be long.
I'm Leon Guerrero, and I approve this message.
Paid for by the committee to elect Leon Guerrero Tenorio. Tony Sanford, Treasurer.
Welcome to the 2018 Guam Election Pre-Post-Game Show on 93.3 The Point. Time to let the dust settle and dig into the early returns of the Guam 2018 election. And now, the 2018 Guam Election Pre-Post-Game Show. Here's your host, Ray Gibson.
I think I'll use that phrase very loosely. I'm just the host because I'm in the driver's chair. It would not be a point program unless I had the assistance and the wisdom of the years, the sagacity of Bob Klitsky, who I've asked to sit in another chair for a couple hours and help me kill the last 2 hours of Election Day 2018.
You know, Ray, I could sit around and listen to intros like that for the next 2 hours.
A fine job. The only misnomer in there is talking about early returns. There are no early returns as the polls are still open. We'll be done with this broadcast at 7:59:59, just as they're putting a rope around the last guy at the last voting precinct to get those last votes in. That's when the polls will officially be closed. If you're in line at 8 o'clock, you'll still get to vote. But it might be a long line. I don't know. I passed by, I don't know, let's call it about 4:45. I passed by John F. Kennedy High School, and it didn't look, frankly, as busy as it did around that same time for the primary election.
Well, you know, on Tall Tales, we encourage people to get out and get it over with. And
as quickly as... Now, I'm sure you've had a chance to get out and vote.
Absolutely.
What time was that, sir?
1 o'clock.
This afternoon?
1300, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, I hate to profile, but you're Manumku. I mean, you are Grandmaster Manumku. You're up there.
Senumku.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm of the opinion, because it's something that I kind of grew up with, is I remember growing up, and you could go vote at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you'd have to stand in line behind every senior citizen there was, because that was, I mean, they looked at that as almost a religious obligation. Something we're going to be first in line this year.
It's a badge of honor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now you get the sticker that says "I voted," and you got the notepad. I see it. I see it. I've got the same. So, what was your recollection of this year? Did you have any comments or any observations as you went to the polls this morning or this afternoon? At the trough.
Yeah, I couldn't express it in quite those same terms, but I think Mike makes a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at Jago, at FB Leon Guerrero polling site, there wasn't that much activity. There wasn't as much activity from the supporters as I have seen in past years.
I heard. I kind of felt that. I did my voting in Barragata, and went in and I don't know. And my observations were, and some of them are on Facebook. Now, first of all, probably the most hospitable place to go and cast a vote. I get out of the car. They little kids of some kind of ROTC, junior ROTC, middle school ROTC, out there with radios. Talking to each other, directing traffic, and finding the best places to park. Would you like curbside voting, sir? No, that's okay. I'll park over here and let some of the older folks, get the handicap parking and the parking a little bit closer to the school. Is okay, no problem. Get out of the car, and I'm immediately accosted as gently as possible, but enthusiastically by a bunch of middle schoolers holding umbrellas, because the sun was out. And so they wanted to escort me to my precinct under umbrella until I got to the covered walkway of the school.
But wait a minute, Ray. That's probably not the way they treated everyone. That was probably just because you're
these little kids don't know who I am.
Well, everybody knows. Everybody knows. Hey, there's Ray Gibson. Let's
Their
get the umbrella.
grandparents know who I am. Their parents might have an inkling of who I am, but they certainly don't know who I am. But they were doing it for everybody, and I thought that was about the coolest thing in the world. Got into the precinct, handled the vote within a few minutes. The instructions were clear, easy to understand. The guy brushed his teeth, I could tell, or at least had recently had a mint. so it wasn't one of the. It was, frankly, I think my breath might have been worse than his. Got in, did the vote, dropped the deal into the padlocked box, and was again escorted back to my car by an enthusiastic umbrella-laden student from the school, and then it was the hospitality tents. I wanted to check out the hospitality tents. Fortunately, that same place is where my sister and her kids were at. So Mona was there with her kids. I didn't have to go visit all of them to find the good food. They were right there underneath the Bota tent. Spent, I don't know, half hour, 40 minutes there, jaw-jacking with a couple of politicians that had came by. And as soon as they found out I already cast my vote, pew! Oh, you've already voted. Okay, bye. Go talk to the next guy.
Yeah.
See if it worked out. Hey, do me a favor. Could you go into that other room and make sure that the air conditioner is still blowing? Push the buttons until it's at like 68, because we're going to get some hot talk in here.
Well, the aircon feels fine after 4 shots of whiskey. I don't know what's wrong with you, man.
I don't know. Cough syrup. I was having a lot of cough syrup. So there's and I want to. Is the microphone on good? I wanted to bring in another voice to our pre-post game show, and that's the voice of Jerry Roberts, the Extra Point, bombtraining.com.
I just heard the word Monumco, and I figured it was
I was supposed to be there.
handing out food or doing something. And
Lining
so I
up.
just came over.
That's cool. Did you vote?
I did.
Yeah.
About 2 o'clock.
This afternoon?
Nobody was there. So I walked in and voted, and we stood around and talked for a few minutes. And still nobody came in, so they said, "You want to vote again?" Yeah,
56,000 plus registered voters, and I'm hearing a lot of, well, it wasn't busy when I got there, but look at the time, 6:12 in the evening, and it's possible that everybody that worked all day long is going to have to find themselves to their polling places.
it is going to be busy.
In the next couple hours.
Very busy.
Yeah,
because normally I vote at that time.
Yes.
It's after 6. And I can tell you, I mean, I'm sitting 20, 30 people deep in a line.
Going.
Go. When? Come on. Huh?
So
Well, right
now
now,
we know
Jay,
why they give you 2 hours to go vote.
Northbound Marine Corps Drive is backed up now all the way from the hill
Yeah.
from JFK all the way back now past the airport and beyond. That's when I was coming in here at about 5 o'clock.
It's to get that feeling like it's a payday or something like that. Well, it's certainly a payoff one way or the other. 6:13, and I'm going to bring in another voice, and it's possible we may, in the next couple of hours between here and 8 o'clock, spend a couple of minutes talking with Kevin Kerrigan from the Guam Daily Post, who would normally be Mike's side with me, but is out doing his real-life job as the managing editor for the Guam Daily Post. Good evening, Kevin.
Good evening, Ray.
And Jerry Roberts is here, and
Kevin.
Bob Plitsky is here. We got the whole round table going, and so you have probably done more since casting your vote and than any of us have. What have your observations of Election Day been so far?
Actually, I took a nap.
Good call, Kevin. Good call.
We will, and for that, we'll go to Spot. We're done with this segment. Thanks for calling in.
No. No, I spoke with Marie Pangilinan early this morning about the long wait we're all in for. And then I went and took a nap because it's going to be a long wait. You know, the polls close at 8 o'clock, of course, and the first results, and they have to, take all of the ballot boxes up to the OG Fieldhouse, and then the ballot counting begins. But, the big issue is how long it's going to take, because each time a write-in ballot is run through one of those tabulator machines, the machine will stop. And that ballot, the operator of the machine will remove that ballot and put it into a nearby bin, and then the machine restarts. And if the predictions are correct, maybe 5,000, perhaps even as many as 10,000 write-ins. That's a lot of stops and a lot of extra hours.
So we're talking about Wednesday or Thursday, maybe? We'll know something?
Who knows?
I don't know. I've heard estimates. 80, 83 hours. That'd put it at Wednesday afternoon.
It would be good to have it done by the first Monday in January.
That'd be good. That'd be a good idea.
Well, we can talk about that. That might come up in a little bit of the pre-post game show that we've got here today. Notwithstanding that, we know that there is a possibility that there could be a runoff. It's what's the likelihood that one of the three gubernatorial candidates is going to get a walk-away win?
No, it's not going to happen.
So if there's a runoff, we won't hear about that until at the earliest, December the 10th. I think is the date that Maria Pangilinan had been talking about.
Right. You said 2 weeks.
Well, it's 2 weeks from the certification. And the certification,
is that what that is?
They got and they won't certify until after they've gotten all of the off-island ballots in and counted.
So
That's
December
right. So we're
10th.
looking at December.
In December.
In December, Jerry.
Oh boy.
and then we'll have the vote, and I'm sure we'll have some kind of a recount and some kind of legal questions and back and forth.
Eddie, you don't go on vacation yet. We may need you.
Well, it's a good thing we've got our constitutional law expert in here to talk about what that scenario might be. Has there ever been an extension of a gubernatorial term until an election commission has officially been able to certify the results of an election?
I'm going to see if I'm going to find the Organic Act here and see if it's from the election or from the certification. I remember 15 days from the election, but I want to make sure that I know what I'm talking about here.
Well, but after so that puts the pressure on the election commission to actually certify. But if we've got these votes out there, and by this is congressional action now. Aren't these votes going out to uniformed services people that are living in the states? Don't those have a 2-week time period before they expire?
Yeah, I think so.
And if that comes to us from Congress, it probably overrides the Organic Act.
Yeah, more than likely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he's gonna look at that. So what are you doing right now? Where are you going to post yourself, Kev?
Eventually, I'll be going up to sit in with the Uggan Limtiaco team at the Cliff Hotel. But we're getting word from most of the camps that they're not going to show up at their places of waiting, if you will, until 10 or 11 o'clock tonight. So everybody's anticipating a very long night.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that's probably going to happen. So it'll be a whole lot of time where you're going to be interviewing people that just happen to show up to check if there's food and some cold to drink at Sam's Lounge and places like that, right?
Correct.
I got you.
We'll have reporters at all of the camps. A lot of our reporters were out in the street this afternoon and this morning talking to the candidates as they voted. and to voters as well. So
Now you have had a chance, and there have been opportunities to for candidates to get interviewed. You sent me. I wasn't able to use it earlier today, but about a 4-minute piece we'll delve into with Ray Tenorio after he was able to cast his votes. I've got some video and audio of Josh Tenorio post casting of his votes as well. And you said there was a guy came up to you, just kind of volunteered and wanted to talk to you about writing in Frank and Alicia.
That wasn't me. That was one of our other reporters.
Okay.
We have that as well. Yeah.
Okay, and so I'm correct though. He was talking about writing in Frank and Alicia, not Bob and I.
Correct.
Okay.
Hey, Kevin.
Yes, sir.
Can if you get a chance and you happen to get a hold of the right pair of ears, if you can find out in 1974, let's go back a ways, how many registered voters there were in 1974. If anybody happens to even hazard a ballpark guess, that might be interesting. And the reason I'm asking the question is I saw somebody post that the most write-in votes that Guam has ever received for anything was 6,411, and I saw it on Facebook. And if that number is accurate, it would have been Paul Calvo in 1974. And it was in a losing effort when he and Carlos Camacho split on the Republican side. And there wasn't a runoff, but Calvo pulled all those votes away from Camacho, and Ricky Berdallo won. What I'm interested in is if that number is true, 6,411 votes on a write-in, I'd be interested to know how many registered voters there were to try to gauge a percentage of those that against the registered voters to see how big a number he pulled in terms of percentages, and then try to figure out, how that might work in for Frank and Alicia.
We'll see what we can find out.
Thank you, sir.
There are on the Guam Election Commission's website. Kevin, I'm going to let you run. I know you got some journalist stuff that you've got to do. But if you run into something or you manage to interview somebody that is more exciting and interesting than Bob Klitsky, Jerry Roberts, or myself, by all means, feel free to pass that along on the station's WhatsApp.
That's a tall order, Ray.
Well, it's still early yet, and as far as I know, none of us have started drinking. So, although that's probably not the I'm sorry, producers volunteering already. Kevin, I'll talk to you again pretty soon. It's Ray Gibson in the studio again with Senior Commander Bob Klitsky and Jerry Roberts as we kind of going around and talking about the election from where we are. It seems like a long time coming. I had to break out 2 notebooks worth of day-to-day diaries and stories to get us to where we are to see. So a complete picture of what this election looks like. And you're right now to go back to. I guess it was the election in '74 with Ricky Berdallo becoming the winner of that one, because I recall it has not been since then that there has been kind of this race where you've got a plurality on one side and the Democrats. How did that work out now with that election? Or am I thinking of the '72 election? 60 with Carlos Camacho when
70.
he first 70. Was the election in 1970 when we elected our first local governor.
Yeah. Carlos won that one hands down against Ricky.
But there was a break in the party, wasn't there? In the Democratic Party, weren't there also in 1970 4 different races, 4 different campaigns under the Democratic tent?
Ken Areola, Manuel Guerrero, and Ricky Berdallo. And
Dick Titano was one, wasn't he?
He ran with Ricky.
Ricky.
Yeah, okay.
Berdallo Titano, yeah.
And so there was obviously a primary election. Mm-hmm. It was contested.
It was,
and to the same degree that Frank and Alicia have contested in running as write-ins against.
I don't think they had any loyalty oaths back in those days.
I'm not sure if we've got a loyalty oath now.
Yeah.
Well, the one we should have is the one that Frank talked about. It's a loyalty to the voters,
to the people.
Never mind the parties. Mm-hmm. I mean, the issues, I'm the wrong guy to talk about party politics. I don't like any of it. I mean, I'm all for independent candidates and making it as easy as possible, like the commentary I had today about that. Simply make it as simple as possible for anybody who can figure out how to get how many signatures or whatever the criteria is, so they can get themselves on the ballot without having to say they were a Republican or a Democrat.
Why can't we do that, Bob Klitsky?
Well, there's no reason, no legal reason that we can't do that.
But how did it get on the ballot? That becomes the, not writing them in. How did they get on the ballot?
The general election ballot, as I understand from a conversation that you and I had, there is only one pathway, and it begins with a primary election.
For a party, for an individual, if you run as an independent and you get enough signatures, wait a minute. No, you still have to go through the primary. Yeah. And the problem with the primary is that, let's say I want to run for senator as an independent, I have to score 3 times the number of votes as are required on my petition. In other words, 750 votes. But in order for anyone to vote for me in the primary election, they can't vote for anybody else.
That's crazy.
It is. Mm-hmm. So it's a classic case of you can't get there from here.
Exactly.
But does the law have to be changed as a result or through the legislature, or could somebody get a referendum and put that on the ballot?
Yeah, well, yeah, theoretically, anything that the legislature can do, you can do with an initiative, yeah.
Because there's no, the legislature, there's no upside for them to go ahead and make it easy for independents to get on the ballot.
That's true. But in the history of elections on Guam, how many voter initiatives have ever been successful?
None.
Because it requires how much?
It's just as difficult.
Yeah.
They make it just as difficult,
right,
to get. I mean, if we wanted legalize marijuana and we wanted to make that a voter initiative, it would be difficult, if not impossible, to get that done because of the way the law has worked and because of the approvals that you would need at the legislature first, I believe, and then the Guam Election Commission.
No, the legislature would be out of it, but it is a cumbersome process to field a voter initiative to enact a law without the operation of the legislature.
So the law has in place, the law is set up for all those things to happen through the legislature.
Yes.
And to change the law, we have to go through the legislature.
Ding, 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 ding.
Right?
Well, they tried that a few years ago. They tried to make it easier and make it so that if you were running as Jerry Roberts, the Communist Party of Guam, wanted...
He did this the other day. He put somebody...
But if you wanted to do that, you know, what they were trying to do...
Hypothetically,
purely hypothetical, comrade.
No, this would be the Jelly Belly Party of Guam.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that would be. Thank you very much. As he puts his jelly bellies up to the camera.
Yeah.
So at any rate, the point is, your point is.
My point is they actually tried that a few years ago, and there were, I think it was Dennis Rodriguez, wasn't it, that came up with legislation that would have made it so somebody that wanted to run as an independent, because the primary was a party mess, was a party if you will, they would have a straight shot to the general election.
I don't remember that, Ray.
Well,
it could be, but
I remember there was
to it?
roadblocks that you wouldn't believe. They just made it so that it was politically untenable at the legislature to move forward.
The Democrats and Republicans have made it very clear that the game goes through them.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Yes.
That's got to change. That simply has to change.
What's the mechanism?
Well, you could do it with a properly drafted legislative bill, and I can even tell you how to do that. You just have on each party's ballot, you'd have a separate column that says independent, and then the instruction would say that you must vote in one column or the other, but you can only vote for 15 party or independent candidates. But I don't think, as Ray points out, I don't think that you point out, parties wouldn't be too crazy about that.
No, because if you said you can only vote for either Democrats in the primary, either Democrats or Republicans or independents. Mm-hmm. You can't cross over.
Ever.
So if you happen to have one independent candidate, that's the only guy you can vote for the legislature.
And that's the way it is now, and that's why we'll never have an independent candidate make it to the legislature.
Because you won't get 15 or 10 or whatever. You can't put a slate together.
That's true.
Well, and you might want to vote for the one guy that's the independent, but it certainly would prevent you from voting from other people you like running as party representatives anywhere else.
That's true.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, so
then comes up the conversation about doing away with the primary system and going to a general election where anybody who satisfies the criteria of so many signatures, let's say, is on the ballot.
Bob Kelly is online on the WhatsApp. He's chiming in on this. He says Guam could have a jungle primary instead of a party primary. That eliminates crossover problems and allows anybody to run in the primary, including independents. Top 2 people move on regardless of their party. I don't know that I'm familiar with the phrase jungle primary.
I'm not. I know that California has something called a blanket primary, where there is a primary, but it's a runoff as opposed to a party preference type primary. So you qualify one way or another to get on the primary ballot, and the top 2 move to the general election ballot. They might both be in the same political party.
That's correct.
They might.
Yeah.
Or in California, Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't have somebody from inside of his own party as his lieutenant governor.
No, I'm saying for the governor.
Yeah. Oh, I see. I see.
You know, and when you think about a system like that, the top 2 vote getters, whoever they happen to be, from whatever party they happen to be from, they move on. So if you happen to have 2 great candidates, then those are the 2 that are going to run off. And if the other party or independents don't have anybody, then they're out at that point. And that takes away the protection for the parties. The protection should be for the voters and for the people, not for the political parties.
But the lobbyists from one of from an important industry would be dead set against it. That would be the manufacturer of smoke-filled rooms.
It's 6:29, yeah, and on that note, we'll take the first break. By the way, folks, if you're listening to this and you're going, you know what, I kind of appreciate that round table. I might have a contribution to make. Trust me, you would probably end up being among the smartest people in the room if you chimed in about now. So 888-8255 is our number, 888-TALK. We'll also take your contributions on the WhatsApp and on Facebook Live as well. In fact, in a little bit, I'll take a look and see what some of the commentary is on Facebook Live. Probably do it after these.
After 34 years as your public servant, my commitment to serve our people has never wavered. I've never cared about making money. My greatest compensation is when I can help a disabled veteran, a cancer patient, or a struggling family to get the assistance they rightfully need and deserve. Public service has always been my calling. I'm Tina Munya Barnes, and I humbly ask for your vote. Situ Asmasi. I'm Tina Munya Barnes, and I approve this message.
Paid for by friends of Tina Munya Barnes, Vince Mafnas, Treasurer.
Super Typhoon U2 spared us here on Guam, but the same cannot be said for our neighboring islands. From now till November 16th, join us as we help Saipan and Tinian to get back on their feet. Acceptable donations include batteries, flashlights, tools, cleaning supplies, mosquito coils, rope, toiletries, personal hygiene items, and others. Donations can be dropped off to all GTA stores, the Guam Daily Post, all Guam Fire Department stations, and the Santa Teresita Catholic Church. For more information on how you can help, visit postguam.com. And now we return to the 2018 Guam Election pre-post game show. Here's your host, Ray Gibson.
Working with my very close, very personal friends, and as I said, smart guys in the studio. I've got Jerry Roberts from GuamTraining.com, host of The Extra Point, and working notes on the Daily Post, and Senator Bob Klitsky, and Judge Bob Klitsky, and Administrator Bob Klitsky, and talk show host and host of the Tall Tales program, Bob Klitsky in the studio. All three of us have voted, and so of the 56,000 plus registered voters out there, we have each made our contributions to the future of Guam. And as I've mentioned many times, more often than probably is prudent, I vote generally based on who is going to be good for my business, and I'm in the business of talk radio. So I really, really hope that some of the people that I had voted for managed to get in there, so that we've always got stuff to talk about on the air.
Anything that makes for good business on talk radio can't be all bad.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so if you by inference want to figure out who those people were based on who you recall from your ballot, so you're more than welcome to, whether or not you're right, whatever. If you think that's who I voted for, yeah, that's who I voted for. What did you want? Decaf or regular? Regular. Okay, that's regular. Yeah. Came out of the same pot. So that's how I. What do you think the numbers are going to end up being based on your experience at 1, my experience about noon? About noon, and 2 o'clock this afternoon. What do you say?
It was low where I was, not quite as low as I inferred earlier, but it was slow, which I kind of liked. I liked the idea of going out there at 2 o'clock and not standing in line for 45 minutes. It's a nice thing. You know, I've been I've seen elections where we hit over 80%, and I've seen some, I think, where we dipped below 70%, I think. I can't really recall the exact numbers. But if you threw out a 75%, would you think that might be okay?
75% would be about 42,000 people. Do you think we saw 42,000 people at the polls today?
I mean, maybe.
Did it feel that busy at any time?
Well, not when I was out there. But I mean, again, this election is hotly contested. I mean, very, very contentious. So I'm thinking that people have a reason to come out. You got 3 candidates. Normally, you got 2, right? There's one less reason to stay home because chances are you have if you don't like the 2, well, you got one more that they can go for. I'm thinking 75% is a pretty decent number to consider for the turnout. That's 42,000 votes, which means someone needs 21,000, and I don't think that's going to happen.
So we're still, I think, all in the same line of thinking that there's going to be a runoff election, and asking the question now what the steps are going to be. And first thing that you do when you got any question that involves the government is generally to check the Organic Act. Bob Klitsky has looked at the Organic Act. What does it say about runoffs?
It says 15 days after the general, if there is no majority, 15 days after the general election, you have the runoff.
Now, is that 15 days after? Because earlier we talked about the certification. Is that after the certification or after the actual election day?
Plain meaning of the words is after the election.
Yeah. In our conversations with Maria Pangilinan at the Guam Election Commission, she said that they would certify but could not certify until all of the off-island ballots were in based on their interpretation of the UOCAVA. And I believe that they've got to wait 14 days before all of those clear. They don't anticipate that happening, being able to do that until around Thanksgiving.
Okay, so is election being a verb or election being a noun? That's what I want. Because otherwise you don't know when this thing's going to take place.
Yeah, well, I think they'll probably get the mathematical computation section of the Election Commission to decide exactly how many days it would be between the general election and the runoff. And then first Maria will speak, and then
somebody will clarify it.
And then the staff will clarify it.
Yeah. This is the same team that took about a week to figure out 1% or what that meant?
Exactly.
Okay.
BJ Cruz used to joke that Adelup was where math went to die. I think they've got some competition there. It's 6:35. Ray Gibson, Jerry Roberts, Bob Klitsky. It's the pre-post game show here on The Point. Joe's there. Just a dude wants to talk about the election. Half a Joe.
Half a day, Ray.
Hey, amigo.
I like your panel there. I just want one clarification.
Please.
You know, they said that Mr. Paris was saying that every time a write-in ballot has, every time a ballot has a write-in vote, it stops.
That is a quote from not just Mr. Ken Paris, but also other members of the Guam Election Commission. Jeff Marchessault wrote on the Pacific News Center last night. Election Commissioner Ken Paris tells PNC it will take each machine 7 seconds to stop and start every time it detects a write-in. Now, this is a write-in not just in the gubernatorial race. I presume that this would be a write-in in every race, both sides of the ballot.
They're in the same ballot. It has to stop. Everything stops.
Yeah.
But, Ray, that doesn't seem to be consistent. For example, in the primaries, there was a number of write-ins. It didn't stop unless there's a toggle switch that they have activated to stop for every write-in. Because that, plus, I think the new law says that the write-ins won't be counted unless
it makes some kind of a difference. So they've got to figure. What I think the logic is, Joe, and like I said, I got a couple of other guys in the studio can work with this. First of all, I believe you are right. I'm told that there is some kind of a switch that will allow ballots with a write-in to go through. But I think the logic is we have to separate those ballots from the others so that we can keep make some kind of a way to account for who is being written in, not just that there is a write-in. What will happen is I'm told that we will get precinct by precinct information. It'll say how many votes Lou got, how many votes Ray got, and how many votes a write-in candidate got. But it won't make any distinction between Frank Uggan, Frank Bloss, or Ray Gibson, or Bob Klitsky, or Jerry Roberts, or Joe. So I think they've got to come up with some kind of a mechanism to identify those and then prep them for the count.
Yeah, because if there's write-ins only on the senatorial, it's going to stop, and they have to do that. It doesn't sound just. I would think that after, they look at the final tally sheet and it shows how many write-ins, and then they would go in and do that.
But all of the write-ins, no matter who they are for, will count in the mathematics towards determining 50% plus one.
Right.
Which is, in my mind, is its own wrinkle, with as many people that have threatened to write Bob Klitsky in.
So I got a question for you, Ray. Is there going to be a runoff?
I think there is going to be a runoff. If there's not, I'll eat a bug. It'll be a small bug. It'll be like an ant or a termite. But I'll eat a bug.
Chocolate covered, no doubt.
Yeah, they get those lollipops with those little worms in them. Or the tequila with the little worm in it. That could work, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the big difference in 1974 and our current election, if you recall, the primary in 1974 was in June. Okay? So that gave a longer span of time. And in fact, I think in fact, on that election, that's the first time we ever used what they call, remember Freddie?
Remember Freddie?
Freddie.
Yeah, the tabulator. That's the first time we ever went through a machine count.
Wow.
Are you too young to know that?
Yeah, in 1974, I was 12.
Oh.
I already had this voice, though. Just, I've already had the voice, but I wasn't paying that much attention to what was going on in the elections. For us, it was whether Uncle Jim was going to run and did he make it or not.
Well, let me ask you a trivia question. Do you know where the tabulation was held at in that year?
The old the tabulations in the early 1970s?
In 74, when we first used the machine.
Guam Rec?
No. God, Bob. I thought you would get this one.
I don't feel so bad now.
Pansiteria. No. No.
ITC building. It was brand new, remember?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did they do it there?
Because that's where the machine was at, and the company that was programming everything was Pacific Data Systems, and that's where their office was at.
Man, tell you what, now let me ask you a question, going back to Jerry Roberts' question. Do you remember, could you ballpark the number of registered voters in that general election?
There were fewer than 70,000 people living in Guam at the time.
Couldn't have been huge.
In 74, I'd have to go back and look at my records, but I remember there were 4 candidates on the Democrat side and 2 on the Republican, and there was about 20,000 plus votes that were cast. Or about 19,000 votes cast.
All right, I got 19 to 7. We got Fox News coming up at the top of the hour. Here's what I'll do for everybody. I've gotten to the part of the Guam Election Commission's website. They've got the comparative analysis report going back to the first to 1974. So I should be able to take a look at this and see if I can get the number of votes, who won, what the election turnout was, and that kind of thing. But just I'm going to throw some names out for the benefit of Bob Klitsky. These were the Election Commission members for this election in 74 or 76. J. Bradley Clem.
Oh.
How about that? Here's another one.
No. He was not a member. He was.
I'm looking at the Election Comparative Analysis Report, and he is listed as the chairman of the Election Commission.
Yeah, after, but not for 1974.
I might have 2 documents in front of me, and this might refer to the election in 76. But in which case, it's still interesting to go over some of these names. How about this one? Joe Diego.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Joe Diego. The reason, just to back up a little bit, the reason Clem was not, I know that for a fact, is because when there was a court challenge, he represented Carlos Carlos Camacho and Kurt Moylan in court.
So it would definitely be not in 1974.
No.
Okay. Well, like I said, it's possible that I'm looking at, because they've got these things piled up on top of each other as PDF documents. So it's possible what I was looking at was the comparative analysis from 1976. There's hundreds of pages here, so I'll scooch down and get to the one from 1974.
Right.
Font of information, my friend.
Joe Diego was a member. Priscilla Cruz was the chairperson. You don't remember that? Yeah. You don't remember that, Bob?
Vaguely.
Bob, I'm disappointed on you. You're always my legal counsel when I...
that in itself is funny. Hey, I'm going to let you run and get Jack on the line. I'll tell you. Thanks very much, Joe. I appreciate the interrogation. Yeah, I'm weak. My 70s election game is weak. Hey, Jack, good evening.
Good evening. You know, I just got through voting. I don't know if my vote will count, but I know for sure it will count for at least 7 seconds. So it looked, just finished voting. For a second there, I was kind of confused because I voted down in Agania. So I went down.
Did you see my sister? Did you see? I think you and Shelley are the only two people that vote in again. I've got the answer to Jerry's question. 1974, the number of registered voters on Guam, 28,854.
Half of what we have now.
23,000 of them came out and vote. 82% turnout in the general election.
So just to take a look at that, you have double the registered voters today. Okay, if you had 6,400 roughly that Paul Calvo picked up in 74, and I'm not saying the same number would come out, but if it did, then that means that machine's going to stop 13,000 times.
13,000 times 7 seconds. Let's call it 10 seconds.
We're talking about that's 24 hours, and no, that would be 10,000 times. I calculated already is 19 and a half hours.
The election will be
stops.
certified in 2027.
Yeah. We're talking about 40 hours for that machine to stop.
Well, maybe we'll have a picture like they had down in Dade County during the Bush-Gore election. Some guy with a magnifying glass looking for hanging chads. There'll be no hanging chads. So we'll see how it turns out. But I made sure that I found it was kind of weird because it sounded the new legislature building, and for some reason, they're asking, don't forget the circle of your male or female. I said, what does that have to do? You know how you find your name?
Yeah.
They cross your name out, and they ask you to sign over and make sure the date and mailing address, and they said, and please mark if you're a male or female. I said, what does that have to do?
What?
Yeah.
They asked you if you were male or female?
They couldn't tell right off.
Could you please circle one? Are you male or female?
I don't think you can do that anymore.
No. You can't do that anymore.
I guarantee you, it's down at Agania. The legislature vote down at the Agania precinct, and right there, after they cross your name out and you verify your date of birth, your mailing address, and the next thing they ask you, male or female.
Were you triggered, Jack?
Right.
I was. I go, are you serious?
Well, I'll tell you what triggered a couple of people was outside of the precinct. There was a printout of all of the registered voters in that precinct with all of their information on it. Now, I didn't open mine, but I did get an email. I did get a note from a friend who has made a formal complaint with the Election Commission. I'll read you what she had to say about it. She was kind of upset about it because there's a lot of information on these voter rolls, and there wasn't anybody watching them. I mean, somebody could have picked them up and walked away, and there could have been massive invasions of privacy. Full listing of voter names, addresses, and date of births outside voting rooms for anybody to take pictures of or steal. I filed my complaint and spoke with Maria Pangolin and asked for info to be redacted. Of course, it all has to go through legal. I understand the purpose, but having it out for all to access is wrong. It should be with an official that can verify for the voter, so us regular folks don't see everybody else's info. And she says, getting off my investigator box now, but there are mechanisms by which you can challenge somebody as they're casting their votes. Are there not, Bob?
I believe so.
And so you'd need something like that to say, hey, that's not Jack. I know Jack, and that ain't Jack.
Yeah, well, it'd be really difficult with Jack because then people would say, you don't know Jack.
That was waiting. I was hoping for the opening. Why does all the good stuff come to Klitsky? You invited me here.
But if I may interject here, we were getting maybe 10 years ago, we were getting flyers in the mail, and I wondered how I got on this mailing list. And you know where they got my name from?
Voter rolls.
Voters registration.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting this unwanted mail from a certain jeweler here in Guam, and I just had no idea how I got in their mailing list, and then I found out they got a hold of the voter registration, and they were mailing out all that stuff. So I don't know whether those things are available. I think they probably are. I don't think they're private. I don't think those things are private. I think you can request for I'm not sure. You could ask Bob.
Yeah. Well, other than that, how was your experience? I mean, did everything go smoothly for you? Was the food good? Did you hit a couple of hospitality tents?
Well, like I said, my voting precinct is the Garnier, so there wasn't much down there.
Okay, there's nobody there.
It was my third time in the legislative room, and I know we have about 3,000 voters there in Agana. So, registered voters. So I think we have a large contingent there.
I'll check.
I don't know whether it dropped off or not, but we have a large roster there.
I'll check. Well, what now? Do you want to venture a guess as to what the outcome is going to be after they're done with the apparent Herculean task of starting and stopping all of these counting devices, possibly 10, 13,000 times?
Well, it's an event here. It's like our Super Bowl here on the island. So, but for myself, I never fill out the senatorial race fully. I get up to 5, and that's all I can do. I make sure I fill out the judiciary to retain. The ones that have always came up, I always retained. I make sure I fill out the school board for the CCU, and I just bypass that. And then, for the AZ, I fill that out, and for non-voting delegate, I fill that out, and so, of course,
yeah, but try to give me a semblance, Jack. So when it gets to be in a couple of days, I want you to be able to say, "I called it." It's going to be a runoff between Lou and Frank, or Lou and Ray, or Frank and Ray.
Well, I think I gave my dead bit away when I said I'm getting my 7 seconds of flesh out of this commission.
I think I understand. I think I understand the point. Well, very good. Hey, listen, you have a terrific night. It's 10 away from 7 o'clock in the morning. We'll look for your participation on the air in a couple of days and see whether your predictions come true, or whether your Gadzu is managed to make it all the way in. What do you suppose, guys, were among the big factors? What's changed in this election that we didn't used to have to deal with?
I don't think we've had to deal with the kind of money that Lou had to spend before. She spent, just in the primary, she spent more than all the other campaigns put together.
I think it's a couple of $1,000. I mean, couple of $1 million. I think between that, what is it, $1.8, $1.9 million they've been able to collect and almost spend all of it, leading up to today.
Yeah.
You think that had a big? If she had a war chest only as big as, say, Ray's, do you think she would have been as successful?
I don't think so.
Think a lot of that is in response to the significant marketing that has been out there?
I do.
Backing up the campaign. You know what I heard for the first time today? I didn't realize there's a jingle. Ray Tenorio and Tony have a jingle. And I didn't hear it until I was underneath the tent. And I'd been there for 10 minutes. This thing is on this endless loop cassette or something, and it was just playing over and over and over again. Then it hit me. Oh, he's got a jingle. I'd never heard it on the air. I'd never heard it in any of the social media ads. But I haven't spent a lot of time on Hulu, where I think a lot of people have seen the videos, and on YouTube, where I think people might have seen a lot of the videos. I did not. I've got mine on Netflix and Hulu, and for those I pay extra so I don't have to sift through all of the political ads or any of the ads.
But they were all over YouTube.
Yes.
I mean, I remember because I would watch like the World Series highlights or something, right, during the baseball playoffs.
Sure.
You go up there because if you don't see the games, then you go up and look at the highlights. And I mean, every couple of innings, it would stop and play a political ad. Right? I mean, they were all over these things because they sense where you are. But YouTube can sense your IP address, and
they know
you're in Guam.
they probably identify you.
Well, yeah, and they go right in and they say it's the bald guy. Play this, right? So I mean, they were all over it, all over YouTube. And I think Bob said the money was certainly a key factor. I mean, that amount of money that they spent on that to get to where they were. But social media itself.
That's the second thing that we
nobody has played social media the way that people in this campaign
have been, and there's a lot of different ways that you can pay it. You can do the pay for play, where you're buying advertising that says, this is my candidate, here's the ad that we would normally be running on television somewhere, but we're going to run it ad nauseum over all of the different AdWorks channels, and there are thousands, if not millions, of AdWorks channels that are viewed here on Guam on a fairly consistent basis. So you get these guys out, and they know how to ping it. They know what the drive times are. They know what the shows to put them in. They know what the websites to put them on. They know all of those things that people are going to respond to.
Yeah,
and they bought like it.
And I've bought some Facebook ads before, and I've done some of those things for business. I mean, you can go in there, and for people that some people listening right now may know very well what this is about. But you can go in there and just be incredibly selective and drill down into the niche that you're looking for, and there's all kinds of factors that you can pull out into a Facebook ad and get to exactly who you're looking for, and just pound them continuously.
So that's social media for good. When we return, social media for evil.
Hafaday and Mabuhay. Over the past year, you have welcomed us into your homes and shared your views about the way things have been and your ideas of what they can be. We've listened, and your hopes for our future have fueled our campaign for positive change.
Lou and I have plans to grow our economy, including tax breaks for small businesses, fixing our roads and infrastructure, and investing in education and technology. We will increase police in our villages, focus public health on prevention, regain GMH accreditation, repair schools, and keep our children safe.
This election is about our future, and we believe that everyone who calls Guam home deserves better.
Our best days will be ahead if we reach for them together.
I will be a governor for everyone, no matter who you are or where you come from. I am Lou Leon Guerrero. I approve this message, and I humbly ask for your vote. On November 6th, let's make history together.
Paid for by the Committee to Elect Leon Guerrero Tenorio. Tony Sanford, Treasurer.
And now we return to the 2018 Guam Election pre-postgame show. Here's your host, Ray Gibson.
It's so weird, 6:55 p.m., and we'll be back here, obviously, in the morning. I don't know what information we'll be able to give you tomorrow morning. Our intrepid producer, Better Mathematics, because he's not at the chalkboard like we are, but Michael has gone through 36 hours, is what his estimate is. That's 13,000 stop-start cycles at about 10 seconds apiece. If they can do it inside of 10 seconds. Stop-start, that's just 7 seconds of the stop-start of the machine. There's still other time motion things that they're going to have to do, right?
And we got to get the ballots there. I mean, some of the ballots won't arrive until 10, 11, whenever. And
so 36 hours from some kind of a start.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's say that you got all the ballots in-house by 11 o'clock. Because people stop off at KFC and have a little food. You know what they're doing on the way to to the field house. And so count from 11 o'clock, and that leaves you at what?
Thursday.
You know, when all and that's if it all goes well. You know, I mean, it's going to be a long one.
Yeah, so I've decided there's two shows that I'm mentally prepping for. There's the show tomorrow where I know nothing, and that's most days. And then there's the show where I think I know a little bit. And then there's the show where I think I know a lot, and I don't think we're going to be able to get to the show where I know a lot. And because this stop-start thing is going to be happening, how much will that affect? And I'm asking because I don't know the answer. will we know the outcomes of the senatorial race before we know the outcome of the gubernatorial?
You can't, because they're on the same
ballot.
ballot.
Because they took the paper out of the machine.
But they're on the same ballot.
And it's going to get counted later.
Right.
But will they, the same way that they'll be able to know that there are X number of votes for Lou, X number of votes for Ray, and then X number of, we know that there's this many write-ins because that's how many we've, the machine knew it was a write-in and kicked it out, but it sensed the write-in and counted it. Will it also sense and count all of the legislative races, the congressional race, the attorney general's race, and retention and all of that
before it kicks it out?
Before it kicks it out.
Good question.
Will we at least have that information?
Kevin, if you're listening, here's another assignment.
Well, I've gone, and maybe during the newscast, I'll ask Mike to get a hold of Kevin. He doesn't necessarily need to go back on the air, but I'd like that question answered. And if we don't find Kevin, maybe in the next hour, Maria Pangilinan. But the other question that I want to get answered is are there any exit polls out?
Oh.
I heard that there were people that were asked exit poll questions on the gubernatorial side, but I have not seen or heard of anybody that is posting any results. Now, it is possible that they're doing it and they're just not telling me, because the last time they gave me exit poll results, I read them at 6:05. And there were a couple of people that got sharply ticked off at me. Who's that? Oh, it's Ken? We can put Ken on the air. Hey, Ken, got a minute and a half.
Oh, okay. It will count everything before it gets kicked out on the ballot, and if after it's been kicked out, it will stop, but it will have totaled everything on the ballot before it gets kicked out in response to the question you raised earlier.
Yes.
So then we will have senatorial and congressional, as well as the attorney general and the
retention,
retention and utilities and all the rest of it.
We'll know who won the race for school board then. That's good.
Yeah.
You want to call that one now?
Yeah.
Shall we call that one early there?
Yeah, I think we could.
Now tell them why you're saying that.
Because
for those who don't know.
Because there were 4 positions for which were up for grabs, and only 4 people were running. So yeah, we can call that. We have everybody that ran, that put their hat in the ring for the Ed board, got the job.
Unless they were write-ins.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you one way or the other. Hey, Ken, why don't you? We got news coming up here in a second. Well, on the way back, why don't you give me a call? Call back to the radio station and give me your summary of the day's events.
Okay.
Good man. The radio station you're listening to is KUSG Hagåtña. We're headquarters for Fox News on Guam, and we're going to get to some of that here in just seconds, and then come back with Jerry Robertson, Bob Klitsky, and Ray Gibson, whoever he is.
May get a vote. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. A tempestuous campaign season has given way to a stormy election day, literally.
Severe weather will continue through the early morning hours. Severe storms are still ongoing from parts of northern Alabama into Georgia, eastern Tennessee, and surrounding areas of the southern Appalachians.
That's meteorologist Jared Geyer at the Severe Storms Forecast Center. In the last couple of hours, suspected tornadoes have been reported in Mississippi and Tennessee. The Weather Service can't confirm they were tornado touchdowns until they inspect the damage, but radar indicated twisters were possible. A storm-related death is reported in central Tennessee, and a senior living center in Tupelo, Mississippi evacuated after its roof was damaged in a storm. That same storm system is expected to move eastward during the day today into Georgia, the Carolinas, and the mid-Atlantic states. In a final campaign appearance before today's midterms, President Trump telling a rally in Cape Girardeau, Missouri last night, there's never been a better time for the American worker.
America's extraordinary comeback is the envy of the entire world. The whole world is talking about it. We're the hottest nation in the world.
Earlier, the president held rallies in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and in Cleveland, Ohio. Former President Barack Obama nearly losing his voice after several campaign stops, including one in Virginia.
We're seeing a record number of women who are running. And Lord knows we need more women in charge.
Mr. Obama campaigning for the re-election of Virginia Democrat Senator Tim Kaine. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Amazon has made its decision on where it will build its second headquarters, and it's a split decision, reportedly deciding to build in the borough of Queens in New York City and in the Crystal City area of Arlington, Virginia, outside Washington. Amazon says it won't comment on rumors. This is Fox News.
Looking for opinion done right? Then go to FoxNation.com and pre-order right now. Fox Nation is the new streaming subscription service that will have exclusive daily shows, incredible documentaries, and must-see on-demand programming. That's the perfect complement for every Fox fan. Plus, go to FoxNation.com, pre-order now, and get one-of-a-kind exclusive merchandise. Available now, but for a limited time only. Don't miss your chance to become a founding member. Go to FoxNation.com and pre-order right now.
Tuesday, there's only one place to be, Fox News Channel. In this critical moment, with the balance of power at stake, this is the midterm election everybody is waiting for. Only Fox News Channel brings real insight, smart perspective, and the all-important results minute by minute. Every key race, every pivotal moment. As America decides, we're there every step of the way. Tuesday. Stay with special coverage starting at 6 p.m. Eastern on Fox News Channel.
In addition to the candidates on the ballot today, scores of issues will be decided.
There are 155 statewide measures across 37 states today. Those include marijuana legalization proposals in Michigan, Missouri, North Dakota, and Utah. Washington state voters have a measure on the ballot that would raise the age for the sale of semi-automatic weapons from 18 to 21. Medicaid expansion initiatives are also being voted on in Idaho, Montana, Nebraska, and Utah. And in Oregon, there's a ballot measure that would repeal the statute that limits the use of state or local law enforcement resources to enforce federal immigration laws. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
The man who's charged with mailing suspected pipe bombs to several Democrats and other critics of President Trump makes his first court appearance in New York City today. Prosecutors will ask the judge to deny bail to Cesar Sayoc, believing he is still a potential danger to the community. Millions of dollars salvaged from the floor of a pickup truck.
When 51-year-old Lorraine West heard a winning ticket for a $688 million Powerball lottery jackpot was sold in Iowa, she wondered if it might be her. So West asked her sister to look in her pickup truck for her ticket. Why? Because she left it on the floor. Turns out it was a winner. West is splitting the pot with another winner who has yet to come forward in New York. She's taking the cash option, a little short of $200 million minus taxes. West plans to give some to her family, making sure her grandkids can go to college, and will set up a foundation for people who need financial help. Ken Duffy, Fox News.
The sexiest man alive, at least according to People magazine, is Idris Elba, the British actor who starred in The Wire. He is 46 years old, and he is not on the market. He is engaged. Asian stocks closing mixed. Dow futures, which had been nearly 50 points higher earlier, now down more than 10. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
I support the buildup. I enlisted right out of high school in October 2000 in the Air Force Reserves. I am a proud service member and an even prouder civilian employee that serves the base. I have served in locations across the globe and have served in Guam during its time of need. I believe Douglas Moylan will be fair to the military and its buildup efforts while staying true to the island of Guam and her people. My name is Ralph Camacho, and I support Douglas Moylan because I believe he will support all of us.
Hello, I am Douglas Moylan, and I approve this message. I respectfully ask for your vote.
Paid for by the committee to elect Douglas Moylan for AG.
And now we return to the 2018 Guam election pre-postgame show. Here's your host, Ray Gibson.
Like I said, just driving the microphones around here and taking a look at some of the topic opportunities that we've got. It is election day or now election night. The polls are going to be open for another 55 minutes, and our understanding of the way things work is you could pull the car up and be the very last person in line at 8 o'clock, and even if it means that you're going to stand in line until 9 o'clock before you finally get to sign over the red line on the voter rolls, you will be given an opportunity to cast a ballot. If you get there and you realize, oh no, smokes, I left the wallet at the house, it's got my ID in it, they will give you a provisional ballot, and it will be kept separated. You will have 7 days to go before the Election Commission and verify that in fact is your ballot, and you are the registered voter that was allowed. And if you are still working tonight, make sure you get your I voted sticker. This is what they look like. These are probably the most expensive I voted stickers you can find because it looks like they put them dye sublimated on the good like photo paper. You feel that? Yeah, this is not Kiss Cut. This is not the cheap one, right? And then we've got the voting notes that look like this. I voted today, and this is my souvenir of the 2018 election. I voted this morning at 10:55. Christina Pistonis was the precinct official that was there, and she signed off on this and can verify to my employers that I did in fact use my 2 hours to go and vote. And I'm happy to see an incredible number of people on Facebook that have got pictures of them with their stickers, of them with their notes. It's kind of fun to be a part of the process, isn't it? You remember the first time you voted?
I did. You had to be 21 back in those days, and I was living in Wisconsin. And,
wow.
And I was 21. I got to vote once in my whole life for president. And then I blew it because I voted for Kennedy.
That's not blowing me. What are you talking about there?
Well, I was 21. I didn't know enough to be a Republican back in those days.
That Kennedy today would be a Republican.
Probably would, wouldn't he?
You think about it. What about you? Your first election memory, Jerry?
Trying to, and I can't recall because. It would have been, I think it was here.
Really?
I think it was here. Because, as I recall, the first time I voted for president would be, I left Guam in 87 to go back in the mainland and do some things, and I had never voted for president.
I'll be darned.
Because it was all the time that I was here. And when I went back, the first time I voted for president was 88. Or not, 88 I guess it was, yeah.
So your first election was a Guam election?
It was a Guam election. First time I was a Guam election. Because as Bob said, you had to be 21.
Yeah. And so when you were 21, Wanderlust, the Air Force radio, etc.
Yeah.
Found your way to Guam?
Okay, well, it wasn't voluntary exactly, but it sure worked out for me. So I was sure happy I got here.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the part where I feel like the youngest in the room. It was 1980. And we voted when we voted. Well, I remember voting it in Agana at the old. It was the old Paseo, the old Parks and Rec at Paseo before they built up the new field, and it wasn't really anything more than just a concrete walkway, a wide concrete walkway, about where they used to have the old farmers market that I can smell, where the basketball courts and the rec center were in there, and that was pretty much all there was there.
A junky building.
Yeah, and that's where it was, and I remember it was a kind of a big deal for the family, and so we had been partying all day. Uncle Jim was running for senator, I believe, at the time, and there had been partying and campaigning. And this is back in the olden days where it was very, very common in that house to always have access to some kind of beer or spirit or wine. And I remember them finally kicking me out of the house and saying, you have to go and vote. Otherwise, if you drink too much, they won't let you. And so I remember them kind of giving me that warning before I went out there and casted my vote. Spending a little bit of time talking about the 1974 election. And since I've got the historical data, I thought I'd pass these along to you, and old-timers, I think, will enjoy hearing some of the names of the people that were involved in the 1972 and 74 election, and who were the people in our legislature at the time. It's a long list because back then there were
21.
Joseph Ada, number one vote getter.
Yep.
And then there's Adrian Cristobal, Al Israel, Alan Sect.
Oh my God.
If you don't buy from us, we both lose.
If you don't vote for me, we both lose. He'd morphed the phrase. Tommy Tanaka.
Yeah. A young Tommy Tanaka.
Dick Titano.
Yep.
Rick Salas. Adrian Sanchez. Benigno Palomo. How about this Democrat Carl T.C. Gutierrez. Roy Duenas. And Roy still has the same mustache. I saw some recent pictures of him. He's virtually identical to what he looked like in the 1970s. Francisco Santos, Francie's dad. Jerry Rivera. Frank Blas Sr. Ben Ada, as in Tony's father. Eduardo Charfus. Jose Duenas.
Ping,
thanks. Dr. Ernesto Espaldon. Who else have we got in here? Here's somebody, a name I recognize very well. James Holland Underwood. Uncle Jim. Conception Barrett, Liz Barrett's mom.
Mm-hmm.
And Chong, didn't she go by, that was the nickname, wasn't it?
Chong.
Yeah.
Connie.
Yeah, and Eddie Duenas. How's that? Does that peel any of the bells of your memory there?
Yeah, this was the 74. Yeah.
Yeah, you can, as you write off every name, you can see those faces pop in.
Exactly.
I do. Yeah.
Exactly. I tell you what, I love that. I'd asked Ken LG to call back in, and obviously we're not going to be doing any stumping for the write-in because the polls literally are still open. But I wanted to get a sense from Ken on your experiences as you went to cast your vote today. What was it like? Where'd you go?
I went to Santa Rita, and for the first time ever, I had to wait for parking. And for the first time ever, I had to wait in line for a space to open up. You know, one of the booths to open up.
And to what do you attribute that?
Yeah, why is that, Ken? Why do you think there was so much excitement in the village of Santa Rita to go and cast a vote today?
Well, because we all know that Santa Ritans are the most loyal citizens of Guam, and everyone feels honor-bound to go and complete their civic duty. But there were a lot of people in line.
They got a great mayor down there, don't they?
Yeah. But normally at Santa Rita, you know, you go in, there's plenty of parking. 2016, there was a little more. I had to wait in line for the first time in 2016. I had to wait like 2 or 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
This time, I had to wait about 5 minutes for parking, and then there was a little bit of a line on check-in. I was pleased to see that because it tells me that turnout was heavy. I came back a couple hours later to bring my wife to vote. I still had to wait for parking. I still had to wait for a booth. So everybody I've talked to told me that the voting stations were very busy. In a lot of places there were lines, small lines, but people were reporting that normally there isn't a line, so that was good.
You want to make a prediction on the penetration of voters? What are we talking about? You think it was up around 80%, 75%, 70%?
I think we're going to be up around 80, or maybe even, you know, north of 80. I think, and the reason why is because people I've talked to are telling me there's still lines at a couple of places. So that's encouraging.
Well, we thought there might be for sure at Ukudu. That was a point that Maria was trying to make to her earlier today.
Hey, Ken, let me ask you, can I ask quickly, who do you think benefits from a higher turnout? In terms of the gubernatorial race?
The candidate definitely benefits from a higher turnout.
Who does? Which one?
The write-in.
The write-in candidate would benefit the most. Well, of course, Ken's going to want to say that. Appreciate your time. I'm sure that Maria Pangilinan, who is also on the line, is appreciating the comments that while there are lines, things seem to be moving smoothly, and you were able to get in and cast your vote with no major issues.
Yeah, everybody I've talked to has said that things were going smoothly. What has been real different this time around is, you know, like I went to have lunch today with Daryl, another raconteur, Daryl Taggarty. Mm-hmm. And we had so many people coming up to us to talk about their experience that it took us 2.5 hours to have lunch because people kept coming by. They'd see us, they'd come by and, you know, spend a few minutes. But, you know, by the time 10 or 15 people have come by and spent 5 or 6 minutes with you, you know, it really pushes the lunch envelope. But
actually, best thing about living on Guam, if you ask me, best thing about it, whether it's politics or not, it's always nice that you can go somewhere, as my dad always used to say, and almost count on a 10 or 15 minute conversation with somebody.
It's a place where everybody knows your name, right?
Exactly. Ken, thanks very much for your time. You're Maria Pangilinan from the Guam Election Commission on the line with us. Good evening, Maria.
Half a day, Ray Gibson.
Actually, the half a day is on you. What's going on? How was your day so far?
I'm here at the University of Guam prepping for the 8:05 p.m. Guam Election Commission meeting.
I see. What will the contents? What's on the agenda for this meeting?
It would be the tabulation of the election, and it will also be a summary of what happened today. And talk about if there's any administrative complaints that we know of. that is part of the agenda.
I don't know that it would fall under an administrative complaint, but I did get a note from a friend of mine in a personal WhatsApp chat group that she felt that there were opportunities for invasions of privacy and identity theft because the voter rolls were left unattended outside the voting areas.
Well, that's part of the law, and I meant to send another part of the law, and I didn't get a chance. But the law states that an index of registration must be made available at a convenient location by the polling room so that voters can easily access it to check if their names are in that precinct list.
Maria Jerry Roberts, does that mean, though, that index and that listing of voters should be left outside of the precinct itself on a table somewhere where anybody can just go and grab it and take a look at anything they want to do?
Unfortunately, if it's the most convenient place, there are some places where the actual polling room is very small, and then it gets crowded. We checked around. I only checked a couple of places, and probably both places, and it may not have been the specific polling site. We didn't change the location of the index.
Okay.
So we our telephone operators took notes on those, and we will take a look at it possibly tonight, or make sure that it gets better for the next election.
For clarity here, because I think we're all concerned about, and I'm sure you're just as concerned as everybody else is, about when we might know some of the outcomes of some of the races. It all depends on the technical part of the counting and the ballots going through the machines as quickly as possible. Obviously, if there's write-ins, and we anticipate there could be several thousand write-ins in this gubernatorial race, will we still be able to get an idea of who is winning or who has got the unofficial majorities or pluralities in the senatorial race, in the attorney general's race, in the congressional race, and all of the other races, Maria?
Yes, as the ballots are read through go through the tabulator, it will read the whole ballot.
Okay.
So there will be results based on the ballots that go through the machine, and for every precinct, yes.
Okay, so all of those, it's just a question of getting the ballots through the machines, and as the machine stops to remove the write-ins, all of the votes there will be counted. So it's possible, if you're able to go through all of the votes, all of the ballots that are cast tonight, you will be able to give us, as I said, unofficial final counts of all of the other races. We just won't know. We just won't know whether or not all of the write-ins belong to Frank and Alicia.
That's correct. And when we will know that will be dependent on the result.
Yes, whether or not they will make any kind of difference.
Correct.
Okay, so if nobody gets 50% plus one, then it's a question of counting up all of the ballots and all of the write-in ballots, and then doing a tally of how many votes Frank and Alicia get.
Yes.
Is it possible? I'm just trying to go through some mathematics here. Is it possible that neither one of the Republican or Democratic candidate could get 50% plus one because of the number of write-in ballots? But what if not all of the write-in ballots go to Frank and Alicia?
Well, we are going to find that out.
So it's possible there could be four categories, right? So you've got the Democratic votes for Lou, Republican votes for Ray, write-in votes for Frank and Alicia, and other.
That's correct.
What do we do with the other?
Frank Bloss.
Frank Bloss, Bob Klitsky, Ray Gibson, Donald Duck, Jake Ufany. That will be interesting. There was one other question that we wanted to ask you, and we wanted to get clarification on this. Bob Klitsky has read the Organic Act, and the Organic Act is very specific with regard to the timing of a runoff election occurring 14 days after the election date. But when you and I spoke about this, it was one of those where we had to wait until the votes were certified, but before the results were certified, and that might not be until Thanksgiving.
Yes, and so that too will be discussed by the commission. One of the factors is that we have to wait for the absentee ballots from Off Island, and the last day to accept that is November 21st.
Whether it makes any difference or not, whether it has an effect on the outcome of the gubernatorial race?
Certification of the election cannot come until after those ballots are counted and after the provisional ballots are reconciled.
Local statute, or does that come from Congress through UOCAVA?
Both. So certification of the election has to wait the 10 days for the UOCAVA and the off-island ballots for Guam.
How many off-island ballots do you anticipate?
We've sent out quite a bit, and we've gotten word of some of them that were able to come back, so they canceled their absentee ballots. I believe we sent out maybe, I'm sorry, I don't know the number offhand, and I don't have it in front of me.
And, what do we send out for the primaries, about 400?
Yes.
Okay. I'm assuming that they probably haven't, and we've got other guys that are deployed and have been deployed since then, so it's possible that they needed to sign up for absentee ballots prior to their deployment. So that number might have gone up or down depending on the movements of the military. Well, I think it's going to be interesting. So have you eaten already? Who's got the best food? Did you already check out the hospitality tents?
No, I was only able to go vote. I was in the office helping out with the staff and answering the calls that were coming in. I have in my hand the number of ballots sent out, and that's about I'm looking at about 600 ballots were sent out. Okay. Off island.
That's more than the 275 or so that counted as the gap between Frank and Lou last time around.
254.
Yeah.
Can I?
So it's possible it could make a difference depending on how many write-ins the guy gets.
Maria, can I ask a question on the number of ways that somebody could list Frank and Alicia on the ballot? Because there was something floating around social media the last couple of days that had Alicia Lim Taco and Frank Bloss. And I know you had a meeting and released, I think there were 3 ways or something that people could list the write-in candidacy for their candidacy, in other words, on the ballot. If something comes in there that says Frank Bloss or Frank Jr. or Frankie Boy well, it can't be.
Frank
Alicia.
Bloss can't be included. I mean, he was actually. They were talking about asking him to take up a Republican write-in campaign.
But what if it said Frank Bloss and Alicia Lim Taco or Lim Tiaco? Because somebody was trying to obviously play games with that and get people to vote the wrong way. So if you saw a ballot like that, what would happen to that ballot?
So the commission accepted 3 different variations, and so those will be accepted by the commission, and then the commission will look at the others.
Because
and they will decide.
I can just see all kinds of challenges on those ballots. Are you going to, if, for example, you have a bunch of those ballots that are marked in all kinds of different ways, you anticipate that the UGG and Lim Tiaco campaign is going to request and challenge all of those if they're thrown out?
We will have a Democrat and a Republican commission member review it with the independent member and the legal counsel.
So we have to wait and see.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you got to wait and see. And will it make any kind of a difference? How many do you suppose that there's going to be? Do you really think that there's a lot of people out there that have confused which one Frank Huggin is and which one Frank Bloss is?
How about simple spelling errors?
Well, that's where this panel would come in. So what they would want to determine is the intent of the voter. And if the intent of the voter, I think if I saw Alicia Limtiaco or a misspelling of Limtiaco, I would presume that the intent of the voter was to cast a vote for the Ugg and Limtiaco team, even though they might have been confused between the two Franks.
Okay, but if the Guam Election Commission has authorized 3 different ways to do it, and that ballot falls outside of those 3 different ways.
Well, those are the ones that they would examine.
Well, that's the point. So,
and I wouldn't say that the Election Commission has authorized. It's more like the Election Commission has encouraged, right? Because the statute says that the touchstone upon which those questions turn is examining the intent of the voter.
Maria, is it encouraged or authorized? Which one is it?
And again, that's up to the commission. Beyond, they will discuss it, and they discussed it before, and they will continue to look at it. Most important, of course, is we want to make sure that we read as accurately as possible the intent of the voter.
I got you. Maria, I appreciate your time here. I appreciate everything that you've done so far. I know that we're far, far away from a moment where we can say, good job, mission accomplished, but keep it up. Keep up the effort and the energy.
Jesus Masi, our staff are slowly coming in, but the rest of us, a few of our staff have to stay back in our office until the last polling site.
There you go.
Is emptied out.
Okay. Maria, if I bring you food, will you let me play with the machine?
No, sorry.
I want to press the button for the siren. I know. I want to ride up there with the Dalmatian. Have a terrific night. 7:28, and the producer says, "Well, we got to take a break here, so we'll do that and maybe talk a little bit." We never did get to the end of the conversation about the use of social media, including that spoof campaign to write in Frank Bloss and Alicia Limtaco in there. Here's what, and anybody that knows anything about buying ads and AdWorks and social media, it's not something that you can do overnight. That had, I think, have been put in place depending on who you talk to, maybe as far back as 10 days ago, before it gets itself into the system. So somebody's been planning that for a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. Konnichiwa! We'll be celebrating the 39th Japan Autumn Festival on Saturday, November 17th, 2 to 9 p.m. at the Governor Joseph Flores Beach Park or Ipao Park in Tumon. Parking will be available across Oka Payless with free shuttle service starting at 1:30 p.m. Advance tickets available now at the Japan Club of Guam office located on the first floor of PM Marine. Once again, the Japan Autumn Festival at Ipao Beach Park, November 17th from 2 to 9. Come, join us. For information, call 646-8066. Thank you to our platinum sponsor, Bank of Guam, and the radio stations of Choice Broadcasting.
As a community, we have always taken care of our most vulnerable. It's who we are. That's why Mary Camacho Torres wrote the Safe Haven Act for newborns, to ensure newborn babies can be cared for safely and properly when their natural mothers are not able to. Even our youngest and most vulnerable must be heard. This year, vote Mary Camacho Torres for Senator. She's our voice.
Top today, I'm Mary Camacho Torres. I approve this message, and I humbly ask for your vote.
Paid for by the Guam Committee, Mark Pangilinan Jr., Treasurer.
And now we return to the 2018 Guam Election pre-post-game show. Here's your host, Ray Gibson.
All right, so what we did take away from that, among many things, is there is no down and dirty on on whether it's going to be the election itself or the certification of the results. That will be taken up by the legal counsel of the Guam Election Commission, and probably going to. I'm sure that somebody would like a judge to entertain some kind of a challenge.
Yeah, we'll look for a ruling on tall tales tomorrow.
There you go.
Tomorrow afternoon.
What's your spidey sense? You want to? I mean, because we could go and just say it's the Organic Act, and that is the defining document.
But it said election. The word is election.
Yes.
That's why I said, is it a noun or is it a verb? Is it the act of staging the elections?
Noun.
Or is it the election as in certified results?
We have the results. We have final certified and reviewed election results.
But that's not what the Organic Act would get. It just says
but the argument
election.
could be made.
It's a noun, and it does say the election, and it does say 14 days. But, you know, if you unpack it, when the Organic Act was passed, there was no UCAVA. UCAVA came along after the Organic Act. And the UCAVA and the Organic Act are federal statutes, and since they deal with the same subject matter, we would say that they are, get out your law and order notebook, in pari materia. They're made of the same thing. So when you're dealing with a situation like that, you harmonize the statutes. So the word then election would perhaps be subject to interpretation given the addition of the UCAVA statute, so that in order for both parts of the statute to work, you'd have to interpret the word election to mean finally determined in the territory of Guam.
Which means certification.
Yeah.
Which pushes it out further.
Yeah. December 10th.
And then two weeks after that.
Yeah, they're talking about maybe right after the Thanksgiving holiday, Black Friday, and
you want to throw in, you know, if we're writing a law school exam here, let's have a typhoon on December 7th, right? It just totally upset everything that we do here, so that we can't even complete the certification. What do we do then?
Well, and if that is the case, if we are talking about something like that, December 7th through the 10th, or if it's going to be around in that window there, then we have the runoff election, the inevitable calls for recount, and then I assume that we would also have to send out a bunch of ballots to the very same UCAVA candidates that we would be waiting on those 14 days on. So 14 days after the 10th is Christmas Eve.
And I have thought about that, but I haven't prepared my ruling yet, because there is a time frame in which the absentee ballots must be sent out, and I think it's longer than 14 days.
Yeah. Getting word there that John F. Kennedy is extremely crowded. There is a soccer game going on tonight.
Good timing.
There was, I think, I want to say there was a football game going on for the primary election, wasn't it? I want to say that there were a couple of things going. There's a primary election, I don't know, some student council thing, and at least a football game that was taking place on the primary election. So here's the deal, guys. It's 7:34, and you need to be the last person in line at John F. Kennedy at 8 o'clock. And it doesn't matter whether you are in that line until 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night. You will be handed a ballot. You've just got to be the guy that they put the rope behind and start walking people in. So if you haven't yet, my guess is that some of the other busier places, Ukadu, et cetera, are probably just as busy through there as well. Before we get into the conversation about the use of social media and a different kind of, so we've had WhatsApp for years in this town, but I don't think we have used WhatsApp as effectively as it's been used in this election. With the multiple kill death hit pieces that we've had out. And the ones that were put together by political operatives, and the ones that were merely regurgitations or memes of things that were already fact. We know that Ray Tenorio grabbed a gun at the Glock party. We know that Lou Leon Guerrero said all of the things that she said. I'm from here, Ray. I'm born here, Ray. I'm more qualified to be governor than you, Ray. I mean, those weren't fabrications. You know, it's not like there were a bunch of guys in a political lab building them and putting them out. They were the real deal. But they all managed to get out with almost even in universal dispersion in such an amazingly short period of time. The effect on the election is what? What do you think?
I think it was significant with the anonymous smear attacks on Frank Ogden. That could have been 254 votes right there.
Oh yeah. And I was watching. I don't know how much faith you want to put into it. We mentioned it this morning, but I was talking about even the coffee cup survey at 76 Circle K. Within the last couple of weeks, Luli and Guerrero had decent numbers, and they tanked. Frank's or the write-in numbers went up as a result because the votes had to go somewhere, right? And so we saw that there was an impact, at least on coffee drinkers, at 76 Circle K.
Does anybody else count?
Wanted to say lose people might get healthier or something like that.
I don't know. Everybody ought to be caffeinated. 7:36. John's on the line. Hey, John. Good morning. Welcome to the broadcast.
Hey, Ramon.
Amigo.
Welcome back.
I haven't been anywhere. I've been on the radio for what is it, 9 months now?
Well, first time I hear your voice again. Hey,
I'm glad you found me.
About the Frank Blas and Alicia Lim Taco.
That's good.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Frank, it should be counted because remember Frank's middle initial is B.
It's Blas.
Frank Blas Ogun Jr. So if you look at it legality way, and Mr. Kliske, correct me if I'm wrong, there are some people that are not, how should I say, well endowed in spelling, and they're not well, how should I say, good in memory, but they know that Frank is a Blas. But the legal view, because Alicia is spelled Alicia, but because they misspelled the Limtaco, they forgot the I, then it should still be counted because Frank is a Blas.
I agree with you, and I think that would clearly define the voter's intent. It would make
as long as Alicia's name is on there.
Now you know who's going to disagree with that? Ken Paris.
Of course.
The Democrat, whoever the Democrat is that is reviewing these questionable write-in ballots is going to be questioning all of this and saying, well, if they'd have meant Frank Uggan, they should have written Frank Uggan, not his first and middle name. If they meant Alicia Limtiaco, then they should have said Limtiaco. It's not that hard to spell.
You gotta look at it from the other side of the hill, Ray. The bottom line is you got the first name correct, but some people somehow would probably think that, oh, is it Blas? Is it Frank B. Uggan? Because
No, John, I'm agreeing with you completely, but I'm telling you that if there's anybody that will disagree with you and I on this point, it would be the Democrat that would be reviewing the ballot.
Well, Ken Paris would just disagree on general principles.
Ken would say, well, he'd be reneged on the Unity Pledge, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, I don't care what it is. I don't agree.
It's the most important thing that ever happened to politics on Guam was that Unity Pledge. Mike Nicholas didn't even bother to sign it.
Yeah, we had to kick him out of the party.
Well, like they say, how should I say this? I mean, I'm just talking on my point of view, the legality. And yes, for me, I think they should count it because Frank is Blas.
I'm with you. We'll see what happens. We'll see if it makes any kind of difference. John, you have a great night. Did you vote already?
Ray, and hey, stay out of trouble, Ray.
No, I don't want to. I did that already, and it wasn't fun. So I think I'm going to find a way to. I found new and different ways. You know, with the internet and WhatsApp and everything, I found new and different ways to get myself in trouble. 20 away from 8 o'clock at night. Again, the polls close at 8, and my nephew giggling over the idea that he mentioned well endowed in spelling. They're just going to leave that. They're just going to leave that right there. Tedo asking, you think this election is going to end up in court? There's already bits and pieces of it that have been taken to court. Ken LG is representing himself in a couple of cases.
That's true.
Yeah.
Whether or not to count the 905 spoiled ballots. Yeah.
There may be some other things. I was looking over the timeline of the election. Like I said, I went through all of the notes, and there have been some interesting things that have come up. Were on the radar. I mean, and in some cases, multiple hours, and then all of a sudden they disappeared. Just a wisp of an issue. And among, I think, my favorites was, do you remember when they made that big flap about Pudding Metcalf? You don't remember that, do you? It wasn't that long ago. It was somebody trying to give the administration a hard time, and Ray by extension,
because
saying
the office was closed, and she was still getting
all this money. Where's Pudding?
Operating out of the back seat of her car, or yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
president.
If you can be effective out of the back seat of your car, then that's okay.
I knew many people that were effective in the back seat of a car. Then there was another issue.
I gotta catch a bus. I'm sorry.
then I want to say it was one of my favorites, and we were talking about this a little bit this morning, because the folks over at Guam Homeland Security and Civil Defense decided that today, because it was on the schedule, they sent out a press release that said, "Oh, by the way, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're going to test the all hazards sirens." And I thought, you've got to be kidding! No, you're not. You can't do that. There are going to be people that don't hear the announcements, don't get the press releases, and are going to freak right out when they hear the sirens go off while they're trying to fill in their ballot, going, "Oh my God, the Russians have finally succeeded."
Ken Leon Guerrero would figure it's a scheme to keep people from writing in Frank and Alicia.
I was thinking about exactly the same thing, and we started, going through this whole kind of there's some Gestapo stuff that's going to be happening. You remember when J.I. Cruz thought it would be a good idea to have his police officers finish his homework with the surveys?
Yeah, that was a great idea.
And then they said, no, well, don't worry about it. It won't be uniformed police officers. And I said, oh, great. Now it's secret police that are going to be out there. Hey, I need you to fill in the papers.
Your papers are not in order. You have to come to headquarters with me.
No, they are in order. No, they are most certainly not in order. So they say this is a history-making election.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad that Tall Tales was here to add its 2 cents worth to the whole process.
Possibility that there could be the first woman governor of Guam.
Indeed.
Possibility that we could see the first lieutenant governor, sitting lieutenant governor, going from the lieutenant governor's office directly to the governor's office.
And?
The possibility that we could have the first write-in governor of Guam.
We could see the first white governor. Potentially possible.
But his last name is Tenorio. How can that be?
Skill and legerdemain.
Well, I almost don't even want to get into that conversation, but it has certainly become a little bit of one of those under the radar issues. I think it's among the things that are chatted about in the Halai. And years ago, I think the idea of a governor that was not born, raised, reared Chamorro would be unheard of.
Anathema.
Yeah, anathema is a good word for it.
Yeah.
Have we progressed there? Are we how tolerant? Well, I guess we're about to find out how tolerant we are.
Yeah, I think we're there. I don't think we're going to make it this time, but I think we are there. It would take the politics. People are policy. It would take the right person to.
I mean, there was a time where and I recall where if you didn't speak Chamorro.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was a significant handicap to your prospects, regardless of what office you were running for.
Absolutely.
You were running for dog catcher.
Absolutely.
Fina Chamorro? No vote.
I had friends who were born and raised here, but did not speak the language, and they were running for office, and they actually went out and they took language lessons because they said they absolutely had to do it.
Otherwise, they'd be a mamatlo.
Caller says, and don't forget, if Ray wins, we'd have the first Japanese first lady. Do you want to talk about some changes in the last 77 years on Guam?
That's for sure.
Yeah, well, it would be interesting. The first wife was the first lieutenant governor's wife of Japanese descent. I think people might remember that, but certainly some very, very interesting things that are taking place. It's been interesting, like I said, since day number one, since we finally figured out who was going to be on the ballot. Oh my God, there are 4 Democrats running for governor. There's 1 Republican running for governor, and then you start looking at all of the other stuff. You remember where you were when you heard that our very close personal friend Liz Barrett Anderson was not going to be running for another term?
Mm-hmm.
That was, I want to say, almost tectonic, because I thought she was strong enough, notwithstanding recent criticism. I thought she would be strong enough to be Attorney General for life if she wanted it.
She, at the Women's Chamber meeting, dealing with, I can't remember what the legal issue was, she was introduced as a candidate for re-election, and she acknowledged it. And then it was about 3 weeks after that she announced that she wasn't going to run for re-election.
Yeah, and that gives rise to a very interesting 3-way race for that job, featuring somebody that's already had the position, which is Doug Moyland, and he came in, I guess, second. And as we move into the runoff, Gary Frank, who was originally competing with Doug for the job, and then started working with him on the campaign, and Levin Camacho, who prior to that. It is possible that unless you were a triathlete or one of his clients or somebody that had worked with him during some of the original military buildup conversations, you might not have known who he was.
You thought it was
a real sweetheart. It didn't seem to have any problems getting votes.
You thought it was a lyric from an old 1960s song.
Leaving on a jet plane.
No, Elton John. Leave on. What are you talking about? Thank you very much. Well, that was late.
Yeah. Well,
it's been a 5 rim shot show. Man.
Yeah, we did not so bad today. Not so bad on rim shots. Generally more than we got in the whole morning show for like the whole week. I think we've done better tonight than we've done. And tomorrow is only going to be to Wednesday, isn't it? Yeah, I think
you're
that's
talking
it.
about things that happened during the election. How about Doris Brooks?
Yeah.
Leaving a job that everybody had said that she has done a wonderful
for life.
Job. For life.
Well, I don't know that BJ ever thought that she was doing an outstanding and terrific job.
Okay.
And, I remember when there was quite a number of people in the Gutierrez administration that took great umbrage with but I hear what you're saying.
But that's a job that she could have kept for as long as she wanted it. Right, and then you just say, "Oh no, I'm not going to have that job anymore. I'm going to go do something else."
Right.
So I mean, that a lot of people looked around and said, well, "Are you kidding?"
Well, what was interesting about that was it gave rise to another 3-way race, but it was a 3-way special election, and the winner of which, B.J. Cruz, was able to take on the position as public auditor on Guam.
A little bit of irony here.
And,
all the times
exactly.
he yelled at her, and then he walks into the job.
And then bails on the legislature. Great, I don't have to be the speaker anymore.
Interesting how things work.
Yeah.
One thing, let's go back on something that you were talking about, in that the social media and the dirty politics and the negative negative campaign ads. I'm going to say dirty politics. This negative campaign ads. And your position
well,
was...
I mean, people will say that, Frank Uggan, see, now I'm confused. Frank Uggan destroying the Catholic Church on Guam. Some would say that was dirty politics.
Yeah, okay, point taken. The issue, though, is you were suggesting that it takes a while to get those ads approved and into the system in Google for YouTube and Facebook, and whoever else has to approve those ads on social media. If it takes a while to get that done, then people are planning these things well ahead of time. Let's take that a step further. Depending who you're running against, and depending who your black operatives are, right, is it possible that we are now in a position with elections that these things are being planned out from the get-go? And that as soon as you sense or who your competitors for an office could be, that you're hiring people to go out and research on potential candidates, so you've got all this information already working, and then when candidates declare, you simply turn the attack dogs loose.
Exactly.
And then these ads are being produced and stacked up for release on schedule. Have we gotten to that point?
I think
now?
so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. Well, getting back to what somebody had wanted us to talk about in the last hour, and I think your Jimmy this afternoon was trying to get into a conversation is how much have Filipino houses, advertising, marketing, psyops houses, and they have them there. If you can imagine, if you think this was a dirty, underhanded campaign at whatever level, imagine just how dirty and underhanded they are in the Philippines. And there are people there that I think know and appreciate political tactics and strategy at levels that we're still light years behind here. So is it possible that a few of those guys were hired by camps here on Guam in order to put together some of these memes, to put together some of these black ops strategies? And the answer, as far as I know, is yes.
PNC ran a story like that.
They did. Yeah, they did. But there wasn't too much. I mean, we have heard there's no smoking gun, and I don't know that we'll ever find a smoking gun other than what many people have told to me as a basis of fact is yes, there are these guys out there, and they might have been working for one campaign for the primary, and have started working for their so-called or would-be competitors now in the general election.
Is there any? Has anybody ever talked about what one of these things costs to generate?
Well, let's look at how much was spent for the entire election. But I mean, we've got guys that are here doing it. This is the part that keeps me awake at night. Is that I'm looking at some of these black ops and these dark tactics that are being used these days, and I'm really worried that some of the people that are putting these things together, these strategies, these plans that you're talking about, are going to find themselves in positions of some kind of authority in the government that we are electing, one way or the other, and that scares me. I'm not afraid of Lou. I'm not afraid of Frank. I'm not afraid of Ray. I'm afraid of some of the people that are going to be coming in as a result. And I keep asking the question: who's going to be in charge of Rev and Tax in 2019? Who's going to be in charge of GITA in 2019? Who's my next police chief? Who's my next fire chief? And will the next one protect the E911 money better than the other guys did? Who's going to be in charge at the land office? Who's going to be in charge at CLTC? I don't know. Is it the author of the Kill Death pieces? Let that soak in for a second. 7:53, we'll take the break.
Half a day, Guaho si Luliang Guerrero, malalaguha man si Josh, padigunay zan mami ni itanota, ikutirata, zanitautauta. Bula pribamata ginigi islata, lotti mekat man mafa amalik. Malaguha man si Josh, pinat lamolik inilat lota, zanat lalibri itsalanta mona para ifa maguwanta. Hasu esti, Haji Mas unanoko para ufamalik isalapi igobet nota. Haji Mas unanoko para ufamalik ispitata. Haji Mas unanoko para protehi ifamiliata and ifamagoanta. Por favor, spiagi corazon nido, zambotaha man si Jos ginigi mamala na eleksyon. Sa angin humaluman man si Jos, Sogi todos inisisadan mami para tanat lamolik STE islata mo.
Paid for by the Committee to Elect Leon Guerrero Tenorio, Tony Sanford, Treasurer.
And now we return to the 2018 Guam Election pre-postgame show. Here's your host, Ray Gibson.
Just a few minutes left in Election Day 2018. The general election taking place for at least another 5 minutes. We don't anticipate that they will close many of the busier precincts probably for another 45 minutes, maybe an hour, depending on how busy things are at places like Ukadu and JFK. So if you took our advice and voted early and voted often today, then good on you. 7:54. Bob Kelly's going to ask me if I have any information on exit polls, and the answer is no. I have no information on any kind of exit polls. I'm told that there were people asking questions, but I don't know where those are all being collated and reported tonight. Good evening, Bob.
You're not going to believe this. This is not Bob Kelly.
Who is this then?
It's his brother.
Oh, my God. What are you doing, Mark?
Oh, I'm on my way out of Anderson. I just wanted to throw something. I thought, get off the election for a few minutes and just have an irony for you.
Try it.
Picture in the paper, ribbon cutting at the route, the Marine Corps Route 3 Denado intersection.
I recall.
I went through it today. There was lane restrictions while they were working.
Yeah.
So I don't know, was that a soft opening they did ribbon cutting or what?
Interesting. Any excuse for the administration's drama department to send out a press release where they've got the opportunity for a quote from the governor and the lieutenant governor. We'll take a look at that. Hey, you drive carefully, Bob, because you got me thinking about another one of my favorite pronouncements. I think it was in another ribbon cutting that took place it was the announcement. Governor Eddie Jerome Bazacalvo makes the announcement about Mandania 2.0. You recall? Mm-hmm. And somebody had the temerity to ask him if this was political in nature to support Ray Tenorio, and he lambasted that particular reporter. Say, how dare you ask me that question? What an outrage for you to ask me that kind of question, the safety of the people of Guam. And then the very next day, SWAT billboards went up. BOTA SWAT billboards went up.
Well, they had to have the ribbon cutting yesterday because they couldn't do it today, and tomorrow would be too late.
That's right. There you go. And so the point is, we've got the governor announcing the Mandania Task Force 2.0, and then scolding a reporter for asking if it was political in nature. And then B, yes, there are political billboards that go up touting these SWAT pictures. And then you'll recall there was another shoe that dropped on that when they found out that they didn't have the rights to that picture. The picture of the SWAT guys they used belonged to the Pacific Daily News, and they very rightly said, stop using our picture. And those went away. Clumsy kind of ham-fisted version of using, I want to say, antelope resources to prop up a political campaign. And I think the last thing, if we've got time for it, is the question of just how deep of a puddle did the Guam Federation of Teachers step in with their paid endorsements of Lou and now Mike St.
Pretty deep one, I think.
Think it'll cost them a whole bunch of money?
Well, the paper said $5,000.
Yeah. Is it per offense per day? Is that one of those, or
I don't know, but it could be. Yeah.
Guam Election Committee. The GEC needs the money to pay for the general election and the possibility of another $500,000 in runoff costs.
That's true.
Yeah, so it's going to be tricky. They're going to have to go look underneath Maria Pangilinan couch and see if there's any nickels and dimes that they can put together to help pay for all of this, and that leads to some of the other big issues that I hope people were thinking about as they went to the polling places, is the financial condition of the government of Guam, the condition of Guam Memorial Hospital, rising crime, rising drug use around here, rotating, revolving doors over at the Department of Corrections.
The chaos at the Department of Land Management and the Chamorro Land Trust Commission.
Seems that what's the latest on that? One of these days we'll just sit around and never mind politics, just shoot the breeze on whatever happened to issues just from this year that have been interesting. Doesn't look like anybody's going to be held accountable for any of those missteps.
Probably not. I think a lot would depend on what happens tomorrow. If Frank Uggan, and this is a long shot, but if Frank Uggan is still viable, then I think you might see some action on that, because he had a bill that, had Tom Adda not held it up, would have solved this problem by now.
Yep. I don't disagree. Hey, Jerry Roberts, thanks for coming in.
It was a pleasure.
Oh, it's fun time, right?
Had fun, yeah.
Bob Glitsky, thanks for staying.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be here in the studio, Ray.
Oh, absolutely. It's air conditioned and everything. Hey, look at the time, would you? My name is Ray Gibson, and for Michael Knight and Kevin Kerrigan, who has got the hardest part of the election job. We're just a bunch of guys, yakking in a studio. Kevin Kerrigan's actually going to be the one that stays up pretty much all night waiting to see if there's any results that we'll have to report to you first thing in the morning on the Ray Gibson Show here on 93.3 The Point. Thanks very much for listening, and thanks for going out there and voting, or if you can, try to make it now and be the last person in line. Here it comes, Fox News Live on The Point.
Deadly severe weather. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. At least one person is dead, others hurt from an outbreak of severe weather.
From northern Louisiana into northern Mississippi, parts of northern Alabama, middle and eastern parts of Tennessee.
That's Jared Geyer at the Severe Storms Forecast Center, who says some of those storms have spawned twisters.
Very early indications would suggest there's probably at least been a dozen or so tornadoes.
Those storms are now moving east, reaching into Georgia, and forecast for the Carolinas and the Mid-Atlantic states on Election Day. President Trump campaigned all day Monday, telling a rally in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
The radical Democrats take power. They will take a wrecking ball to our economy and to the future of our country.
And then before a late-night rally in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, telling Fox's Sean Hannity.
There's something going on. There's an electricity that feels like 2016.
But Democrats are energized as well. Former President Barack Obama campaigning in Virginia on Monday.
You're going out there, you're going to make sure that people vote to start making things better.